They didn't lose interest. You changed something and it happened so subtly you didn't catch it. At the beginning, everything felt natural, effortless, almost automatic. You didn't think about what to say. You didn't calculate timing. You didn't second-guess your tone. You just responded. The interaction had a rhythm that didn't feel forced. Messages came and went without pressure. There was space between them, but it never felt like distance. It felt like anticipation. You weren't trying to create attraction. You were simply not interfering with it. But then something shifted. Not dramatically, not in a way that felt obvious, just a small internal change in how you approach the interaction. You started thinking more. You started noticing patterns. You started adjusting. And that's where the dynamic quietly broke. Because attraction doesn't respond well to adjustment. It responds to consistency in emotional presence. Not perfection, just consistency. At first, your behavior had no weight behind it. There was no need to control how things were perceived. You weren't trying to avoid mistakes, and you weren't trying to create reactions. You were just present. But over time, that presence turned into awareness, and that awareness turned into control. You started rewriting messages before sending them. You started wondering if you should wait before replying. You started asking yourself what they might think instead of just expressing what you felt. And that shift changes everything, because when behavior becomes controlled, it stops feeling natural. And when something stops feeling natural, it creates a subtle tension, but not the kind that builds attraction, the kind that makes someone pause, the kind that makes someone step back. They don't think, this person changed. They feel, something is different. And feeling always comes before understanding. So while you thought you were improving the interaction, making it smoother, more attractive, they were experiencing the opposite. Less spontaneity, less unpredictability, less emotional movement. Everything became slightly more expected, and expected behavior doesn't hold attention for long. In the beginning, there was uncertainty, not confusion, but curiosity. They didn't know exactly what you would say or how you would respond. That's what kept them engaged. Not games, not tactics, just the natural unpredictability of someone who isn't trying to manage every moment. But once you started managing, that unpredictability disappeared. Your responses became more calculated, your timing became more intentional, your energy became more controlled. And while that might seem like improvement from your perspective, from theirs, it feels filtered. Something is no longer flowing the same way. And when flow disappears, connection weakens. Gradually, quietly, almost invisibly. That's why it feels confusing. There's no clear moment where everything changes. No argument, no obvious mistake. Just a slow shift in how they respond. Replies become shorter, energy becomes flatter, initiation becomes less frequent. And you start wondering what went wrong. So you try to fix it, you put in more effort, you think even more about what to say. You try to bring back the energy that was there before. But that only makes the problem worse. Because now it becomes controlled behavior with no natural element left. And that creates even more distance. What you're doing feels like effort. What they're experiencing feels like pressure. And pressure doesn't attract. It repels. Not aggressively, but enough to make someone slowly disengage. This is where most people misinterpret the situation. They think the solution is to do more, to show more interest. But the issue was never lack of effort. It was too much interference. You didn't lose them by doing too little. You shifted the dynamic by doing too much in the wrong way, by overthinking, by over-adjusting. So the solution isn't adding something new. It's removing what wasn't there at the start. Removing the need to control, removing the need to predict every outcome, removing the pressure to maintain an image, and returning to something simple, responding without strategy, speaking without filtering every word, letting the interaction breathe again. Because when you stop interfering, the natural rhythm comes back. And when the rhythm comes back, so does the feeling. Not because you forced it, but because you stopped blocking it. That's the part most people overlook. Attraction doesn't need to be created. It needs to be left alone. The moment you stop trying to control how you're perceived, you become easier to feel again. And when someone can feel the interaction instead of analyzing it, they lean back in, not consciously, but as a response to something that feels right again. So no, they didn't lose interest. They felt the shift in your behavior and responded to that shift, which means if the pattern changed once, it can change again, but only if you stop trying to manage it. Because the more you try to force connection, the more unnatural it feels. And the more unnatural it feels, the faster it fades. But when you return to that original state, unfiltered, present, something changes again, quietly, subtly, but enough for them to notice. And once they notice, the dynamic starts to rebuild, not from effort, but from the absence of it. And that's what brings everything back, because attention was never meant to be controlled. It was meant to be felt. The second you stop trying to manufacture connection and simply allow it to unfold, everything changes. What once felt forced becomes effortless again. What felt distant becomes familiar. And what seemed lost often returns without warning, simply because you stopped chasing it. Sometimes the fastest way to bring something back is to stop reaching for it altogether.